you touched on the situation of the debt in the UK, a topic that perhaps isn't well known by the majority of people, is the situation with PFI, PPP. Now, one way of looking at it, it was a short-term measure to buy votes for governments of the time. And you expressed in the book the dire consequences of that PFI, PPP payments for social provision in Scotland. Could you expand on that?
Actually, the classic PFI is the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, or the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, what to call it. They actually saw them coming. The contract is a sort of payday loan every day for the ones who are the PFI people. And I'm told, for example, that the contract says that the only people who can renegotiate the contract are them, not the folk who pay for it. It's a scandal of the first magnitude. It is absorbing huge amounts, I'm not talking about billions, it's absorbing billions from the National Health Service and from our education system, because a lot of schools were built on PFI as well. So I'm a socialist. I believe that you have to be audacious on behalf of the public, and I would bring them in. And I would say, I understand that I have to ask you to renegotiate. And they would say, no, understandably. I would then say to them, well, if that's the case, I'll tell you what, I will pay you not on the nail as we do now, but a year in arrears. And they'll say, we'll take to court. And I would say, absolutely delighted. Because at the moment, under the confidentiality rules, I cannot tell the public what is in this contract that they are paying through nose for. But of course, if you go to court, then all the documents become public knowledge. And if you can face the wrath of the public when they really discover how you're taking us to the cleaners, well, I think your PR department might tell you something different. But, if you're still adamant, there's no problem. We will have an independent socialist government and you will be taxed for 30% of your profits. Simple, you're still getting a good deal, but you'll be taxed for 30% of your profits and the money come back in the public sector. We should not tolerate spending money and giving money to people who took us to the cleaners. Commercial contracts are renegotiated every day of the week. And even the Tory government in London brought in all the major contractors to the government and said, we want to renegotiate contracts. And they did. So why we can't do that, at the moment I can't understand. But if you've got a socialist government in, there would be no problem whatsoever. And Aaron Bevan said the greatest instrument in the armoury of a socialist is the audacity to think what they tell you not to think, and the audacity to do what they tell you you cannot do. And of course, we would be the power, we would have the lawyers, and we'd say those contracts are either renegotiated or we will tax you. Simple as that, the public no longer loses. You remember George Osborne's Christmas tree? Osborne goes into the Treasury, brand new Chancellor, and it's coming up to Christmas. And he noticed there was no Christmas tree in the Treasury. And they said, well, it's coming. And they said, well, how much will it cost? Some extortionate sum to put up a Christmas tree. And he said, this is ridiculous. This is Osborne, the Tory. And they said, it's in the contract, the PFI contract for the refurbishment of the Treasury. He said, go to B&Q, get one for £5. And they said, the civil servant says, but we're breaking the contract. And he says, break it. And they didn't do anything. They didn't sue him, for the difference between the B&Q and the rest. And that's when Osborne twigged that a number of these contracts weren't in the interest of the general public. So if you get a Tory can do it, there's no problem for a socialist to do it.
I notice in the book that, not surprisingly, you make a big play about full employment, but particularly getting young people into work. And one of the ideas in your program was what you call higher technical institutes. Really, to paraphrase how you describe it in the book, you suggest that we should actually, some children in education should actually come out of the academic sphere and move into a more practical sphere. Could you also elaborate on that?
Yes, I should explain that this is a very slim book, but it took 9 months for me to finish it. I went round lots of places in Scotland talking to lots of people and listened to them, had ideas, bounced them off them, rejected a number of my own ideas as well. But one thing constantly emerged in the education system was that there are youngsters at the age of 15 who are not going further in the academic stream, don't want to go further in the academic stream, and what do you do with them? They become frustrated young people. So the idea I had, and I bounced it off various people, is that they transfer to the further education colleges. But you're thinking, I'm a youngster at 15. My mate is going on to the 4th year, and he's going on to college or education. Have I lost status in going somewhere else? And status matters to these young people, self-pride and all the rest of it. And I had a look at the FE colleges and said, look, we've got to raise their status. If you're going to raise the status of a young person going there, they have to believe that they're going to something that really matters and, carries a cachet for them. So I said, we should really rename them higher technical institutes. And those youngsters going into them, they'll still look at reading, writing and arithmetic and all the rest of it, but they'll be taking education, technical education. And the award at the end of it would be a technical baccalaureate. Now, baccalaureate carries a great deal of status internationally. It's a very high level of educational attainment. So a youngster leaving, let's say, the academy or the high school, doesn't feel that he's being demoted, that there's a loss of status. It's like the transfer of that guy Mata from Chelsea to Manchester United. Nobody says he's lost any status whatsoever. It's a sort of equal transfer. So the youngsters going there to further education colleges which are upgraded in their ability to teach young people. You're going to a higher technical institute and you're coming out with a baccalaureate diploma. You are really somebody, instead of being nobody who failed their academic part of their career. And that's the kind of, I think, the imaginative thinking we've got to do. Now, if you put young people into that, there isn't much point doing it if there's no jobs. And if we have a full employed society, and folks say, oh, you can't manage that. Full employment is actually defined as 2 or 3%, because there's always a churn of people leaving one job and going to another. If we had that kind of full employment, a young person transferring to a higher technical institute would do so knowing they were going to get a job that fitted their circumstances and their ambition. And therefore their attitude to education at that level would be entirely different from what it is at the present time. I remember my daughter, when she started her teaching career, she started in Kirkintilloch, it's an old mining area, and she's a teacher of English. And she phoned me up, and she was in tears, because she was just about to start teaching Shakespeare. And a wee boy said, "What for, miss?" And my daughter went into the usual spiel, education and opportunities, and the wee boy said, "Doesn't matter, nobody here will get a job." And of course she knew that was right. The wee boy was speaking the truth. So how could she stimulate the interest of these children in something like Shakespeare when there was no hope whatsoever? But if there's jobs outside that they know they're going to get, then you get young people beginning to take their education much more seriously than that group I'm talking about at the present time, who think there's no hope whatsoever. So it's a change of emphasis within the education system.